Let's kick off with our first panel discussion of the morning. It is our DE&I forum. So let's welcome our guests. They are Marientina Laina, Global Head of Sustainability NTT GDC at NTT, Marc Garner, Senior Vice President Secure Power Europe at Schneider Electric, and Sophia Flucker, Technical Director MiCIM and Managing Director Operational Intelligence at MiCIM Limited. Now, the good news is I got through all of those job titles without falling over, which I was firmly expecting to do, as I did it in our rehearsal. And a warm welcome to all of you. Good morning and welcome to Data Centre Live.
Hello.
Good morning, good morning. So I'll just run through exactly what we're talking about today, and that is how diversity, equity and inclusion, they're all staples of the modern employment landscape, but will this affect how data centre businesses approach hiring and management? And we're going to be discussing exactly how to implement DE&I and, most importantly, how this differs within the data centre industry. So, good morning to all of you, and I'll start with a lovely open question. Do you all think we're doing enough at the moment to encourage new professionals into this sector? And Marc, you're top left, so I'll start with you.
And the short answer is no. The tech sector as a whole is facing a huge shortage skill at the moment. The data center industry, particularly with the exponential growth we're seeing at the moment, is at the forefront of that challenge. I like a few stats, so I'll share some with you. The Uptime Institute shared the 2 million full-time employee equivalents in 2019 in the data center industry. By the 2025, we're expecting that to increase by 300,000. It's a significant number, and within that space, we have to really focus our activity around aspects like DEI and making sure that we represent the full social economic platforms through our recruitment activities and the people we bring into this industry.
Marientina, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I would just like to echo what Marc just said. Are we doing enough at the moment? No, we can always do better, that is for sure. And because we also like some good stats, it's important to note that right now women in tech make up approximately 25 to 30% of workforce, which is quite telling. And also to note that, for example, women in minorities represent 3 to 7% of the IT workforce. For me as well, when I made the decision to join the tech sector, a lot of friends or colleagues asked, are you really sure? This is a very male-dominated industry. And for us in NTT GDC, increasing these kind of figures is a commitment, a very meaningful priority for our diversity, equity and inclusion and program. And actually we're quite pleased to see that from since FY21 we have managed to increase women representation from 11 to 28% in executive leadership. Are we doing enough right now? No, but we are committed to do better and to do more. Thank you.
Sophia, we've got two no's there, so I'll leave you to follow that. Would you echo those sentiments?
I certainly would. I mean, I think it's borne out by the statistics. We know that we're not as diverse as we should be, so certainly we need to do more. I guess I could kind of add to the last point that MiCiM is a construction company, so we do construction in data centers, and I think the proportion of women in construction is even less. So MiCiM does better than other companies. We have about 30% of our workforce is female, but it's not enough, and we're still trying to improve our inclusivity so that we can really benefit from having a much more rounded team. I suppose I would make the point that diversity and inclusion isn't just about gender, or it's not just about one issue, but there's so many different types of diversity, and I think we really need to kind of open up the conversations to think about how are we dealing with different minorities and kind of reaching out wider.
I'm going to dig in what you just said there a little bit about opening up the conversation, and we've got three resounding no's. We're not doing enough at present. I guess the obvious question is simply why? Why aren't we doing enough, and what could we be doing differently?
So maybe I could jump in there if you don't mind. I think we have a a challenge in our industry around visibility. I'm fairly new by reasonable terms, I guess, into the data center industry. I've been within the industry now for 5 years. I was aware of what the data center industry was beforehand, but the criticality around it, the fast pace of the industry, it's just not visible to the everyday person unless you're working in this space in the tech industry. So when we look at broadening our talent pool, we have a challenge because people aren't aware of what the data center industry, the tech industry, can really add to them and add value. So I think that's one place for us to start, creating greater visibility of what we do, the criticality of the industry as a whole, and the opportunity for a diverse, broader talent pool within this industry.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with Mark, and if I'm also to share some insights from what we think and what we're doing here. You asked why we're not doing enough. We really need to look at our past. What can we do better? We really need to look at our future. If we look at our past, at our president, and in a very, let's say, vertical and honest way, from the hiring process, opportunities that we provide to, and as Sophie rightly mentioned, it's not just about women, it's about all different groups that are part of that. How they are represented, what access they have to feeling empowered, to career progression, to feeling that they have more and more agency. That is one thing. If we do that in a way that is honest, informed by data, and also we have support from leadership, that actually tells us quite a lot about what we can be doing in the future in order to rectify all of that and to make sure that we attract and retain an increasingly diverse workforce. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would pick up on something that Mark said at the beginning, which was really about the growth of the industry. So, you know, it's growing so quickly and it's continuing to do so. So it becomes very hard to fill the positions. I think also there's probably a wider issue, again, as Mark mentioned, that perhaps people are not so aware of the industry, but I think of jobs in technology and engineering and those kind of things in general. So I think it actually starts very young. You know, if children don't think, oh, I want to be an engineer, I want to do this kind of career, then you've already got a reduced talent pool. So you've kind of got different things working against each other, and then we have a bigger problem at the end of it. So but there's certainly lots of things that need addressing. I think on the last point, people definitely look to see, do they feel they can fit in an organisation? So if you see a workforce where you're not represented, whether consciously or unconsciously, I think it doesn't necessarily encourage people to feel welcome or to see themselves or put themselves forward. So for that side of things, you know, as you start to become more diverse, it sort of helps to grow itself in a way.
Yeah, I think what Sophia just said is actually really, really important. How do we make sure that from a culture perspective, people feel that they can be part of our business and they can feel actually that they can belong and they can be accepted and be themselves and bring that added value that would be associated with. So that's something that might sound like a nice thing to say, but it's actually really challenging to implement in practice.
I think just one of the points that Sophia mentioned at the start there was around attracting young generation, and we've got to be, I think, as an industry, as businesses, greater advocates of STEM and apprenticeship type programs, because it creates a huge opportunity for us to develop within. And you mentioned around the culture of a business. That helps to redefine culture with. I was on a panel the other day. I was asked the question around how we manage within an industry where we have 5 very different generations working together. Probably the first time it's been in this space. And when we talk about developing culture in an organisation, in a business, in an industry, this is a huge opportunity for us, because the experienced older workforce can learn from new talent, new ideas coming into the industry, and we get to coach and develop those new early careers coming in with some of the experience that sits within the industry. But it helps to drive change and helps to drive cultural change in our businesses.
Because Mark, that leads us on beautifully to the next question I wanted to go into. So I'm not sure if you've got a copy of my script in front of you, but if you haven't, thank you very much. I want to talk about mentorship and development, because a couple of you have mentioned the value of retaining talent. From what you've seen within your own organisations, how important is it to mentor and develop people, to not only attract the talent in the first place, but to keep them within the industry?
I think that's really important, and I know it's something that we're very keen to support within our own business. I think it's not just from individuals and making sure that they can kind of progress and reach where they want to get to in their career path, but I think in terms of for the business itself and for growing and identifying future leaders and becoming kind of sustainable in that side of things, you need succession planning and you need all of those things. It's really part of our business strategy. So I think it's definitely a way in which businesses can support their teams.
Yes.
Sorry, man. After you.
Thanks. I just wanted to agree with Sophie and say that mentorship is really important when it comes to, of course, retaining talent, further developing our own people as well, and also making sure that we transfer knowledge and insights and empower our people to when it comes to leadership style and so much more, but also for building personal connections. We have a mentoring scheme and program in our organization, just like everyone else, many other organizations, I hope, but something that we are especially proud of, in addition to our mentoring program, is a program that we launched some years ago. It's called I Make Her Story program. Again, it is targeted on helping women further excel in senior leadership, and it is based on sponsorship, so active sponsorship. It is a more, let's say, engaged mentoring program, which is really built on the premises that a woman looking at excelling in more senior levels actually has a sponsor that helps her throughout that journey and building her skills and her knowledge and capabilities. And we have found that quite fantastic in our effort to increase female representation. But at the same time, something that I would like to note is that mentorship, in many ways, and for myself as a mentee and as a mentor, we think that that's something like an extra thing or a luxury. Like, for example, in many cases, I have my mentees and they say, oh, if you're busy, let's reschedule and all that. While at the same time, we need to recognize why it is important and why it is a priority and make space for that. Because just having a mentoring program and guidelines and all that, or looking at how many people have a mentors, it's not so telling, right? So it's about how do we make sure, what kind of identifying the value that it adds and driving that with commitment, and also the role that leadership can play in the showcasing this kind of behavior as well.
Marientina, if I can just stick with that, because you're surfacing a lovely example as a mentee and a mentor. For you, having done both, what are the main learns you've had about actually working with someone to help and guide them in their more the formative stages of their career?
Yes, so it's interesting because sometimes, I think that in some cases, some mentees might be thinking that what do you really make out of as a mentor out of this mentoring relationship? And for me, at first place, I felt that empowered to have the opportunity to communicate values that from a leadership style are important to me, such as inclusion and vulnerability and curiosity. But at the same time, it has provided me with a big opportunity for self-reflection, and that is an ongoing part of my professional growth as well. So that is definitely something that I have found, in a way, being a mentor, helping someone grow and ask them questions that might sometimes be, let's say, provocative? Like, have you thought about that, or why would you hesitate that? Or have you thought of yourself being a leader in the next years? Or how would you go? Or are you actually aware of what you are missing and what you could be doing better, and how we can work towards that? So it's about, let's say, challenging but also nurturing relationship, out of which I have made a lot for myself, and hopefully my mentees feel the same. I don't know. We'll have to ask them.
And Marc, if I could come to you next, if my notes here are correct, which I dearly hope they are, I understand that after progressing through your career, you became first involved at Schneider Electric through a graduate programme. Is that correct? How did that benefit you, and how does that benefit your interaction with newer employees?
Indeed, yes. So I joined Schneider in 2005 on a graduate programme. Coming from outside the industry altogether, so I had no electrical background, and I was selling finance, mortgages before joining Schneider. So that investment in someone from outside the industry that didn't have any of that background and, dare I say, baggage in some cases as well, it's been really important in terms of my career development. I've been able to look at aspects of the business in a slightly different way without that background that comes from a technical design background, say, for example, and ask slightly different questions. And for me, that's really helped me through my career with Schneider. What was really important, though, is, and I'm so glad the question around mentorship was asked, because without the mentors, without the coaches that I've had within Schneider Electric, I wouldn't be where I am today. They have helped me develop myself through the organisation, but equally that puts me in a strong position to help as a mentor now to new people coming into the organisation. I have a fairly strong opinion around this, though, on mentorship. That mentorship and coaching as a whole has to be relevant for diversity, equity and inclusion. And when I say that, if we're going to recruit a diverse pool of talent from lots of different backgrounds, Sophia made the point earlier that you have to have a mentorship program that's reflective and able to support them properly. So I give you the example. In Schneider Electric, we have a program that's running at the moment at 50-40-30. 50% of all our new hires will be women by 2025. 40% of our frontline managers will be women, and 30% of our senior leaders will be women by 2025. I agree completely with Sophia's point that this isn't a gender conversation. But if we don't have the right level of leadership and potential mentors within the business to be able to mentor female talents as we bring them into a very male-dominated industry, we're not doing our recruitment efforts, our efforts in diversity, equity and inclusion justice.
And do you feel having that sort of programme with putting those numbers to it, it isn't necessarily forcing the issue, but it makes sure it's top of everyone's mind?
Yeah, and look, we have to recruit based on the best person for the job. That doesn't change. We have to recruit for the best person in the job. But when we bring the pool of potentials to the table, it means we have to challenge ourselves around the diversity of the pool of people we bring to the table. I'm far more likely now to take risks in my recruitment based on the people I have around me. So if I have the right coaches, the right people that can mentor people within the business, I'll take some risks on the profile, on the skill set, and see if we can coach them within the organisation. There's other areas where we have to invest in the skill, in what's already been developed. And that's born out of necessity. But yes, I think it does help. You have to have those challenges in front of you to make sure that you are challenging yourselves and your leadership teams around you to do more in this space.
So we've touched on some of the benefits of having a focus on DE&I. Sophia, if I can come to you first, what benefits have you seen by having that focus that give a benefit to the corporate space?
I think this point about we're always trying to find good engineers and a strong team. So I just see it it's not optional. We have to kind of look broadly to kind of build our teams up. And I just wanted to pick up on one of the points about looking at people outside of the industry. I mean, we have to do that. We don't have the luxury of having an excess of talented people who are sort of ready to go and fit perfectly in every role. So I think we need to look at, well, what talent is available. We have to invest in training, in coaching, in mentoring, and all of those things. And I think recognize as well that it's not just a matter of someone's got X number of years of experience and they can technically do the job. I think so much of what is often missed in engineering and construction actually is the human element of things. So a lot of, in any workplace, it's human relationships. It's dealing with your customers and resolving issues and the whole supply chain. So I think that's not something which is necessarily easy to train. You don't just send someone on a course and suddenly they're an amazing manager. I think that comes with experience. It comes from working with other people. And it comes from some of these sort of one-to-one coaching elements, kind of learning by seeing role models and how do they do things. So I would say that side of it's very important. But also this point about, well, not everyone is an engineering graduate. I think Mark mentioned apprenticeships and those kind of things. I mean, the skill shortages at all levels of the industry. It's an apprenticeship level. It's kind of people who are hands-on, people working on site. It's designers. It's all over. So I think we need to make sure we're not kind of very rigid in what we're looking for. And we certainly find that people can be very siloed in their roles. So if I think about a construction project, there might be some people who kind of sit on the client side and that's what they do. They're all about trying to build new data centers or perhaps manage existing ones. And then you've got your designers, and they've always been a designer. They kind of sit in the design office. They kind of do the repeat job for different projects. You've got the contractors who do the building, the installation, perhaps the testing on site. And then you have people who are operators, so perhaps it's an outsourced operations team. And people can be very much in their box. They might have only ever done a job in that particular role. They might not have moved around the circle. And we certainly find that where we have had experience, with different backgrounds, working for different companies, where people have done different roles, they're a much more rounded character. They've got a lot more experience. They're a lot better at understanding and perhaps anticipating problems, having empathy for where someone is coming from. We're all about collaboration, and I think if you've lived in someone's shoes, that really makes life a lot easier. You can bring a lot more to the table.
Yes, and from my side, I agree with Sophia. It really resonates with me what she said, that bring someone in someone else's shoes in order to really have a more informed and empathetic understanding of where they come from and decisions that they make. And for us, in many cases, if I'm to really think about the benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion organizations, the response really would be around the resilience, the fact that teams that are more diverse, they are more productive, they can be more innovative, they feel happier, and that has also an impact when it comes to retaining talent. So it is, at the end of the day, there is a strong commercial case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. If people feel more productive and happier in their job, then I guess it's a no-brainer, right, about the fact that that's something that we need to focus on doing more and more. And again, do we really realize how important that is? And do we really, can we actually make sure that we build that case in a way that is also backed up by, data, information, programs, leadership sponsorship? I think that that's all something that as an industry we need to work on together, because as I understand from Sophia and Marc, we all kind of share similar views and similar challenges and opportunities in many cases. So that's where I think that the benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion in this industry need to be further explored and understood and identified from an ecosystem perspective as well.
Because one thing you've all touched on briefly there is maybe the bravery or the imagination a recruiter needs to have bringing people into the industry. Marc, as you said, you came from a financial background, for example. I'm sure you have all worked with people who've come from other areas before entering the industry. How do we empower recruiters within the industry and the managers who are part of that decision-making process? How do we empower them to make those braver decisions instead of going for I'd say the safe CV? How do we offer that empowerment?
For me, this has to really focus around the opportunity on transferable skills and looking at skill set rather than experience. I see so much opportunity across the data center industry to learn from other industries and what they're doing around sustainability, as an example, and their hitting green credentials. This is a real opportunity now for us to bring in that transferable skill, that knowledge that comes from working within a pharmaceutical industry or a healthcare industry, but it can still be deployed in a critical environment, in a data center environment, and that's where we should be starting to expand our pool of talent and where we go shopping for that pool of talent. For me, it creates a fresh perspective coming into the business and a different level of understanding. It allows us to challenge the norm from what we have day to day within the industry and really push that creativity forward. I've been fortunate to run teams in all parts of the UK, and now I'm running a team across the whole of Europe. And I look at the benefits of understanding what happens in Romania against what happens in France, and seeing how you can then partner those practices together and get the best out of both of them to drive greater efficiency, to drive greater knowledge and improvement within our behaviours. And that all forms part of our DE&I culture in Schneider Electric.
Yes, and from our side, maybe given that we're talking about how do we go about a more diverse workforce, the first thing, I guess, is embedding diversity throughout the hiring process as well, and in a very systemic way. And that should be from training hiring managers and recruiters to practices such as blind CV screening or trying to have a designated percentage of minority candidates, for example, in shortlists. So we need to be quite intentional about all of that. But also importantly, how do we make sure that in hiring panels, there is also more diversity? We actually have different people that make this kind of selection there as well. And yeah, these are practices that we are looking at, we are increasingly introducing, but also being mindful of the fact that we're a very global business and there are very different circumstances that we need to encompass across our regions. So it is a real balancing act, trying to find the middle ground between a top-down approach where you say that's right, that's our program, what we're trying to do, and its implementation, taking into account a bottom-up understanding of the situation in different geographies and what a realistic implementation would really look like.
Sophia?
Yeah, I think I really agree with the points the other panelists have made. This point about diversity of experience is really important, because it's not a static industry. You know, we're changing all the time, and to keep up with the pace of innovation and the pace of change, I think having people who can see things differently and have got things that they can share from other experiences, and I guess think outside of the box, because they haven't been doing things in the way that we've kept on doing things. It prevents things from becoming stale. You know, the future's not going to look like how the past looks.
Well, Sophia, I'll put you on the spot for a second. Have you got an example where you've seen that in your organisation? Someone has come in and suggested something or challenged a decision in an appropriate way, and everyone's found a benefit from it?
I can give an example of a recent hire where we took on someone who had no data center experience, but had done very similar roles and was very familiar with the equipment that we're all used to working for in data centers. Had lots of process experience, kind of nuclear, pharmaceutical, those kind of things. So it was very obvious that their transferable skills were there. And actually the part about getting the data center specific experience, that was relatively easy because the mindset was already there. I think it was very easy for that person to kind of adopt our way of doing things and really has fitted in very well. So that was kind of a great hire for us. And I think that's certainly an area that we know that we will have success in recruiting in the future.
Just to remind everyone, you can still send your questions into the studio. We'll get onto the Q&A in just a moment. You can do that through the app. They come through to me in the studio. We'll get onto those in just a couple of moments. But just before we get on to that, we've mentioned data. I think, Marientina, you mentioned it, about how data can be used to drive decision making. It's very easy for us all to say that, we'll use data. That's our solution to this problem. That's a big help in this problem. In practical terms, how can data be used to help address this issue?
So, I think that the role of data is quite critical when it is to really consider monitoring KPIs and all of that. And I think, though, that in order to be able to use the data to monitor meaningful KPIs need to be set up. So, of course, it is important when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion to look at data and the way that they provide a picture about the current situation and also how to monitor as we move forward. But I also need to be honest about the fact that a more nuanced approach is needed really here, right? There is the role that data can play when it comes to, let's say, quite quantitative and specific KPIs, and then there is so much more that needs to be understood and planned, where the role of data can be helpful, and it's a very important one, but at the same time, we need to be mindful of the role of leadership, sponsorship, careful planning, and also realistic about the implementation of a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy as well.
I'd fully echo that. It's, data is an important part of it, but we're still a business people industry, and we have to bear that in mind. I think where data can really help is around this skill set analysis and transferable skills. Because that allows us to use data to challenge some of our biases. Do we want someone with an engineering background? Do we want someone from within the data center industry? Where data can really help us is around those transferable skills and skill sets. We have a tool in Schneider Electric called Open Talent Market. It's an artificial intelligence tool that allows our people within the organisation to look for either projects or new roles based on skill set and transferable skills. If they want to develop themselves and want to take on a project outside their area of expertise, this is a platform that allows them to do that. And I think that's where we can use some of the tools available to us, the data available to us to challenge our existing hires, the people within our business, but also schools and colleges and universities and other industries around the skill sets that they have and the right people to bring into the industry.
Yeah, I think I see the data as being a tool to do the analysis. So, I think we've all recognised, okay, we need to be doing more. But where exactly is the problem? And it's not about creating sort of arbitrary targets, But if you can get the data from, say, different stages of a recruitment process, or understand perhaps where areas are weaker or where there's room for improvement, because I think the issues are not always where people expect them to be. So it's about, rather than kind of making decisions based on assumptions and kind of your feeling about, well, okay, we want to do something, but we're not really sure what. I think that the data can perhaps point towards where more attention is needed.
We've pretty much established, I think, today that this is an industry-wide problem. Do you think there's anything that could be done across industry to tackle these problems? We're hearing of lots of great ideas and initiatives within individual organisations, as you've surfaced here. Is there more that can be done across the entire industry to make it more attractive to people?
So from our point of view, anything in line with what I said a little bit earlier, that is actually quite important. Conversations like that we have right now when it comes to realizing the importance of this issue in all of our organizations right now in this panel is very insightful, is also very helpful. But at the same time, and I think that there is a lot of lessons learned. There is a role, for example, I feel I've learned a lot from my fellow panelists today about what they're doing in their own businesses and how they tackle these kind of issues. So that's definitely very encouraging and something that would provide a lot of help and support when it comes to tackling an issue that is common. But at the same time, we also need to realize that from an ecosystem and industry perspective, our voice is much stronger when we are together, and also being mindful of the fact that we are all part of each other's value chain, and that's also very important. And being conscious of this issue as a common issue that we are all trying to tackle and commonly improve on is a great point of departure and could actually help us all, let's say, accelerate our own journeys there as well, and make a broader positive contribution as well. So yeah, definitely, I think that there is there's quite a lot that we could do from learning from each other.
Sophia, sorry.
I was just going to make the point, I think it was mentioned before about sort of the lack of visibility of the data center industry as a whole, and I think that's perhaps part of it. So I know there are some sort of outreach efforts just to make the general public a bit more aware of data centers and why they're important. And I mean, I think we need to do that anyway. So it's not just relating to diversity and being able to recruit people, but data centers, and I know there's more sessions later on in the event about sustainability. So if data centers are going to be scrutinized and are going to be criticized for their environmental performance, then people need to be more aware about, well, what are they really about? And yes, of course, they have an environmental impact, but what are the benefits? And it's just making things, I guess, putting a balanced view out there, so people really know what we're talking about.
I fully agree with that, Sophia. It's the same point I was going to make. If you go back to the pandemic, the data center industry was put up there with the electric grid, with water as a critical industry, because if this infrastructure falls down, the world stops, business stops. It's a critical infrastructure now, and we need to change some of the narrative around the industry as a whole, the value it brings to our social lives as well as our business lives, and create more visibility around the benefits of it. Sophia mentioned sustainability there. I strongly believe that data centers are part of the cure. How we fix sustainability going forward, it will be a data-led fix. And we're going to need the centres that hold the data for us to be able to use things like artificial intelligence to take the behavioural aspect out of how we achieve sustainability, away from the individual, and automate it. And data centres are going to play a key part in that. We've got to build that story out, create more of a visible industry for those who don't work within it. The other point to answer the question that I think is really critical is around community. Marianne's mentioned on a couple of occasions the ecosystem. For us to really drive D&I in this industry, it's going to take time for us, each of our organisations, to get to a 50% diverse workforce, or gender diverse workforce, whichever way we look at it. So we have to use our ecosystem, each other, to be able to. Can Sophia coach someone from within Schneider on, or be a mentor within Schneider, and use the skill set we have within the industry to help retain the talents that we bring into the business, and exploring more around that community piece, I think, is going to be key for us as we drive a more of a DE&I culture in data centers.
Now we are nearly up to time, so I do want to quickly get to some of the questions from the virtual audience, and this is one I absolutely love. I know if anyone asks me what I look for when I'm recruiting a journalist, for example, and I always say I want them to be inquisitive, I want them to be nosy. For you, and this is a question, sadly, our viewer didn't put their name, what's the mindset you need to work in the data centre industry? If you could just give me 30 seconds on that each, that'd be fascinating. What is the mindset that you look for someone coming into the industry?
On a personal level, I think it's all about attitude, and it's to do with the values. So do their values fit with the values of our organisation? So open, honest, collaborative and fair are very much MiCiM's values. So it's understanding, are they going to fit within our culture? Are they curious? Do they want to learn? Are they motivated? It's all of those kind of things, which in many ways are perhaps more important than their qualification background, because you can learn those things, but I think the kind of the personality and that kind of attitude towards learning, how open are they going to be towards learning? So I guess that's something which is very important on a personal level for recruiting.
Fully echo that. It's attitude, purpose, meaningful purpose. Are they in line with what we as Schneider Electric represent as a business? And then it's things like ambition and agility. Do they demonstrate it? Because we are a fast-paced industry, and we need to demonstrate agility to be able to work within it.
Marientina, I'll give you the final word.
Sure. Yeah, I think for us also, I completely agree with Sophia and Marc. I think it's about really curiosity, agility, and empathy as well. One needs to be curious. It is an industry that is changing all the time, and also from a skills perspective, they need to be quite adaptive to this kind of change, be comfortable with that, but at the same time, we really rely on working together. So collaboration is the core of everything we do. So we are looking actually people that can be accountable, but also on their own, but also good team players as well.
Okay. Marientina, Marc, Sophia, thank you so much for joining us on our opening panel here at Data Centre Live London. It's been fascinating. We could go on, but we have a keynote to get to. So thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.